We're good to start now, Joyce.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon to all of you. I hope you're all keeping well and safe on this beautiful spring day, certainly in Dublin. And it's great to have the sun shining at this time of the year. So a very warm welcome to the Blockw ICS Spotlight webinar series, focusing on blockchain and emerging technologies. In this series, we are asking the question, how can blockchain and other emerging technologies help us redefine problems, create solutions, and reinvent the future? Blockw is delighted to be working with the ICS team, Joe Kenny, Manuela Armini, and Edwina Fogarty in developing this webinar series. My name is Joyce O'Connor, co-founder and chair of Blockw. Blockw is a female-led network whose mission is to create awareness about blockchain and promote equity and diversity in its use and application. Blockw also looks at increasing access to education, training, and skills around blockchain and emerging technologies. Today, we are in conversation with Elaine Deehan, who's the County Manager of Ireland for Starling International. And the topic is how technology will transform how we bank. Elaine will be interviewed by Saoirse Mulligan. You are both very welcome. And let me introduce now Elaine and Saoirse. Elaine Deehan started her career with Citibank and AIB. In 2015, she joined Currency Fair, the world's first online peer-to-peer foreign exchange provider. She was the founder of PocketWire, a mobile youth account. In 2019, Elaine took up the position of County Manager Ireland with Sterling International. Elaine is member of the Advisory Council of FinTech Payment Association of Ireland. Interviewing Elaine, as I said, is Saoirse Mulligan. Saoirse worked in corporate and treasury banking in London for over 10 years and has been consulting in the Irish and UK FinTech sector since 2016. It was then, she said, she discovered blockchain and has never looked back. She is an advisor to startups and SMEs, exploring with them how technology, particularly blockchain technology, can help future-proof their business while contributing to a better future for society and for our environment. Saoirse is particularly interested in the whole area of sustainable development. She represents Ireland on the European Commission Blockchain Strategy Infrastructure Group for SMEs Financing, is an ambassador to Global FinTechs Index. She's a member of the Blockchain Ireland Skills and Innovation Working Group and a member of Blockw's Steering Committee. You can acquire CPD points for attending this webinar event. And I'd just like to say and share with you a very interesting development that's happened this week in relation to education credentials. This week, the Institute of Banking with Bank of Ireland, AIB and Ulster Bank and Deloitte announced the launch of a unique blockchain-based educational credentialing platform, EdQ, which provides real-time access and an unalterable trusted store of education qualifications, regulatory and other professional developments like CPD records. It's a world's first, and that's why I'm talking about it today. So congratulations to all concerned. We'll be hearing a lot more about this development. Elaine and Saoirse will discuss the future of how technology will transform how we bank. What does the future of banking look like? What role does blockchain have to play in enabling seamless digital financial services? And how do we keep our identity and our money safe? Their discussion will last around 50 minutes, and Elaine and Saoirse will welcome your questions as they arise throughout the discussion and conversation. You can send in your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So it's over to you now, Elaine and Saoirse. We look forward to your discussion.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for a fantastic introduction, and also congratulations to all involved in the EdQ. That's a great milestone for Ireland as well as education and credentials, which is imperative to the future of how we do everything. So excellent to see that. And welcome, Elaine Deehan from Starling International. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you to everybody who's joining us this afternoon. We have a wide and diverse audience from the Blockw community, as Joyce mentioned. Great to see so many of you again. We have attendees from the Blockchain Ireland ecosystem and of course the students of the Irish Computer Society, ICS. So welcome everybody. We have a lot to cover today, drawing from Elaine's significant experience and expertise, as Joyce mentioned, in the fintech and frontier technology industry, both in institutional banking and fintech startups and scale-ups. But just to get us started, as Joyce mentioned, we want to make sure that this is an interactive session for you all. So we want to get as many questions and comments in the chat box as possible. So here's a first question for you all, and thinking about the actual context of this event. What should banking in the future offer us that it doesn't already? And what technologies most excite you about the future of banking? So we'll just leave that question with you. Pop in your comments and answers, have that conversation, and we'll come back and forth to you during the session and at the end of the Q&A. And then to get us started, Elaine, you've had such a diverse career so far in banking and in fintech and emerging technology. And I suppose going back to what Joyce said in your Citi and AIB and other employment, you were probably in fintech before fintech was fintech. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself and your steps into fintech and how you've seen change over your career?
Yeah, thank you. Sorted. Thanks, Joyce, for the introduction and the welcome today. So yeah, I guess I did actually find myself working for fintech before fintech was actually, coined as a portmanteau. I started my career in Citibank, and that was, over 20 years ago. So I'm showing my age now. But, I suppose over my time, in the early stage of my career, I hadn't really kind of grasped the concept of what technology could do or the power of technology. And as things started to, kind of move forward and technology was brought more into how we did things, there was a lot more automation. Like we used to scan huge amounts of documents, and there was so much manual intervention, paper everywhere. I remember sitting in offices surrounded by stacks and stacks of paper that had to be scanned before a person's application would be visible on a computer screen, and then people would be sitting there keying in that data. Wasn't even read off the application form, and actually it made me as a person, when I was filling out a form, oh my goodness, I've got to be like really careful about how write in block capitals, because there was a human being sitting there, inputting that data. And then I guess, so that over the course of the first 5 years that I spent in Citibank, I did see an awful lot of change happen, but nothing like, where we are today. And I worked for a company called Centennial, which I suppose the guys there would probably like to think themselves as one of Ireland's first real fintechs. Mm-hmm. And Centennial, as a technology company, in financial services, really, I suppose did earn that title. Although Flexco, I think, is probably Ireland's oldest fintech company, then Kerry. But yeah, so, and I suppose what had started to happen was that regulation was changing, and the regulators were looking at different ways of doing things and introducing kind of new rules to kind of cope with the change in technology. So I spent some time in Centennial. I was there for about 5 years, and then I went back to Citibank. Citibank is one of those places. I don't know if there are people on the call from Citi, but it has a revolving door, quite literally. So many people start off, they do a stint in Citi and go back. And when I went back, I actually went back to the Innovation Lab in Citibank, which was kind of, I suppose, the next step for me on the journey into fintech, where and more so realizing, actually being conscious that this was now a new thing. So we were looking at technology and how technology could transform not just how we did things from an operational perspective and an automating a lot of processes, but how we actually create products, how we service our clients, what types of new products we could build for our clients. You know, considering mobile technology, tablets, big data, biometrics in terms of authentication. You know, so technology was really kind of creating all of these new opportunities, not just from just making process improvements, but actually generating whole new business models, which meant that City, you know, was and as an organization has always been sort of on the frontier of new technologies. They launched the first ATM, you know, they were funding huge projects, you know, 150 years ago that, you know, that led to revolutions in other industries. So it was a great time to be at City, and I learned so much and got so much exposure. And I guess through that journey, I started to see how fintech could really democratize financial services and give consumers, not just big enterprise organizations, access to better, faster, cheaper, safer. You know, when we think about what fintech and technology can really do. And that's when I moved into Currency Fair. And Currency Fair, as you said from the outset, is the world's first peer-to-peer foreign exchange platform. I think not many people would know that, but the guys that set that up, you know, set it up on the back of their own problems, sending money back and forth to Australia, and then looked at how they could use the technology to actually, you know, improve that. And then scaled it to make it available to everyday consumers to be able to transfer money across borders at a fraction of the cost in terms of transaction fees, but also giving them access by, you know, creating a peer-to-peer foreign exchange market to foreign exchange transactions at, you know, 30%, 30 bips from the interbank rate, and at speed as well. Because through, you know, international payments, you've got the correspondent, the SWIFT network payments can take, you know, days to arrive from one country to another. But the Currency Fair model just completely broke that down, simplified it, and made this available to everyday people. And that was for me kind of the kind of, I suppose, the inflection point where I was able to say, gosh, you know, technology can really is transforming financial services, but it's actually transforming people's lives. It's making them better, and including, inclusive, and you know, but giving people access to, you know, low cost financial services, you know, that's fantastic for everybody, to make everything, you know, to make it accessible for everybody. And so here we are now in the midst of a pandemic, and you know, where fintech and technology is really transforming right now how we live our lives generally, how we work, but very much how we bank.
And I mean, there's so much in our career backgrounds that align in terms of starting with the major institution, leaving and going on to somewhere else, and then going back briefly with what you learned. I did that with AIB, and I know that you're ex-AIB for a stint as well, Elaine. And you see so much in the outside world, having gone from one institution to another and back, and then to move into the fintech world where you see real transformational opportunities. But I suppose one of the things that you would have seen in your early days as well was technology that you thought, wow, this is really out there. Don't know where it's going to fit in the future. And then it might surprise you further down the line, you know, that trough of disillusionment that we keep on hearing from McKinsey. I wish they put that to the back burner. But here it is again, I'm raising it because there's probably some technology that you saw that you wouldn't have seen it become so prevalent today, or you may not have seen open banking and that willingness, because of regulation, for institutions to work with startups and to integrate with each other and share data and information. What has been the surprising technology for you, coming from your background, that you see in use most today that you thought this isn't going to last?
I'm so sorry, Saoirse, but you cut out on me, and I don't know if you cut out for everybody else, but I missed your entire question.
Oh no, okay, no problem at all. I think my reception is pretty good, but what I'm asking was, in your in your background, because you've worked in different institutions and you've seen different technologies emerge, has there been a technology that has surprised you in terms of its adoption, that has surprised you as becoming mainstream in financial services? Like, for example, for me, it's the willingness of banks to engage with each other to share data information, and regulation is a huge part of that, and that's the open banking journey. But is there anything that you've seen that you thought, wow, this has really become mainstream?
I think the open banking piece, and what I would say about it is that I actually think we haven't even gotten to that point with open banking, right? Because it was driven by regulators, and when the regulators tell banks to do something, the banks will very much look at it and go, what's the least that we can do to keep the regulator off our back? And I think that's kind of what happened, with PSD2. And so the journeys from a customer's perspective, not that great, so why was this really going to transform my life? But I actually think that, particularly from a banking point of view, that is very much in its transformational. And I think something like a pandemic is just one of those kind of big macro events that just accelerates that. Why, I suppose, is the main question. And what is it about open banking? So I guess from my point of view, seeing all of these different services being able to connect into a bank account, my bank account, to deliver me something of really, intrinsic value for my life, and to improve my life in some way, or to give me a different type of a service that the bank cannot do. Banks are like, they have just amassed so much data about us, in terms of where we're spending our money. So they know everything, right? They know how old we are. They know where we live. They know how much money they don't know how much money I spend on coffee, but they know where I'm spending my money. They know how much my mortgage is. They know how much I owe to people. They know absolutely everything about me. But at the end of the day, it's just a bank account. I have my money there. I take my money out, or I make my payments, and but it's not really transforming my life in any way. And I think with the likes of a pandemic, or with this big, huge event that we're living through right now, that the real power of open banking is to really to create that opportunity to get in at that data, and to pull it out, and to make it really, really, really useful and tangible, not just to us, or not just to companies to kind of sell us more stuff, right? I think that's one of the big things that people fear around, data, and people accessing or knowing about their data. There's lots of reasons, but say that's one of them, that you're just going to use this to market more stuff to me. No, it's about the underlying data. What's in that? What does it actually mean? And then how can we create a service that utilizes that data to make it really valuable for you? So like, whether or not that's investing, or saving, or reaching some target or some goal in your life, that this service will enable you to do that by using the underlying data. I think there's so much in that, because a transaction that goes into your bank account, 20 euros debit, there's so much behind that. There's behavior, there's psychology, there's everything. Why did I spend that 20 euros there on that thing? And then if you think about a service that sits and connects, and they can connect to the psychology behind that payment to deliver you something of value in your life. And I think that's where it can get really transformational.
transformational, and there's an element of, well, the data integrity is one side of it, the data provenance, and when we get into the technicalities of blockchain and the benefits that it can provide from a future-proofing perspective. If the information is coming directly through an API from the bank, does that immediately give it that stamp of approval of integrity? Or if the data is coming from elsewhere, like from Google, for example, who may have the exact same information as a bank does, but they don't have that proof or integrity or regulation at the moment, that is coming crashing in at the same time. And how do we validate, how do we prioritize, and how do we identify what is the data that we should be using for the benefit of the individual, the consumer, which is a word I don't like using, because we shouldn't be consumers, we should be contributors, prosumers. But yeah, what's your take on that? How do we make sure the data isn't clouded from coming from the open internet side of the likes of Google, etc., and big data, and then coming from banking APIs?
Well, I suppose the integrity of the data from a bank, because you've got this requirement to verify the identity of a person before they can open a bank account and start using that bank account. So there is a integrity in that data. Like with the likes of Google and Facebook and anyone can have a Google account. There's no obligation on me to prove who I am, so I can set up multiple Google accounts and have multiple identities through Facebook, through Instagram, through so for me the integrity and the provenance around that data is very, very questionable, because and that creates this opportunity in this world for really bad actors to so I think that those guys have a big responsibility to really look at who is in their database. I think they need regulators to come in and say, no, if you want to open a Facebook account, you got to prove who you are, and stand over your identity on Facebook, not just so that a government can snoop on you or whatever, but from for everything. For me to interact with somebody through those channels, I want to know that they're a real person or a real business, because there's so much fraud happening right now, and consumers and I agree with you, totally don't like that word, but because it's kind of like you're going to consume my product.
Exploit and extract.
Yeah, there's an exploitive kind of element to it. But an individual, there are so many bad actors who are trying to tap into you as an individual and your bank account and like your money. So a bank's role is to keep your money safe. Fundamentally, they will make money on that in other ways, but the goal of a bank is to keep your money safe. The regulator is there to make sure that bank does its job and keeps your money safe, and they will keep the financial system and all of those banks behaving correctly. So I think the fact that a bank has to identify you and to verify and to make sure that you are behaving properly within by using your account gives that data a level of integrity that is much more valuable, and you as an individual, your bank account, your bank data is extremely valuable.
And something that I've heard you say before, and it always resonates with me in terms of trust and technology and banking, Elaine, is that the more you can trust in the trust, the more you engage.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing phrase, and it really makes you sit back and think, okay, it's engagement, it's trust, it's technology. And from the blockchain world, this is something from a philosophy perspective that we've been pursuing, exploring and driving for years. So talk to us about, with Starling International, talk to us about the ethical banking philosophy and how important that is to your brand and the future of banking.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it is like trust. So again, it goes back. An individual wants if you're going to put your money somewhere, you have to trust that the person is going to look after your money. So if I was going on my holidays and I was giving a key to somebody, I wouldn't give it to anyone, but give it to a person that I trust, and I have to build up a relationship with that person to know that I can trust them. And it's the same with your bank. And as Starling, you know, we have a mission to improve and empower people in their financial lives, and to create the best. Our goal is to offer people the best current account experience from the best bank in the world. And Anne Boden has made that statement. It's a big, bold statement, but she stands behind it. And so we've got to make people trust in us. And how will they trust in us? Well, they will trust in us by our behaviors and how we serve them, where the products that we offer, the partners that we integrate with. And we have a very, very kind of, I suppose, ethical mandate. We won't onboard anyone into our marketplace that doesn't align with our values. We do very strong due diligence on anyone that becomes a marketplace partner for Starling. We take our regulatory responsibilities very, very seriously. And in terms of how we engage with customers, we serve our customers very, very well. And that's in so many levels, right? But in terms of, how our customer service people are, how you get treated as a customer, and then even things that our technology will help you with your day-to-day life. So how you can manage your finances through your app. We offer products that give you that little piece of trust. Again, it comes back to, for example, I know I've mentioned it to you before, but we launched a product in the very first lockdown called the Connected Card.
Excellent.
Again, this goes back to trust, that people who are at home self-isolating didn't want to just hand out money to, a neighbor to spend, to do their shopping, run off with that money, but give them and not give them a bank card to do it and give them access to all their funds. So we created a product that was called the Connected Card, which is linked to a wallet on your account, that a spending wallet with up to a £200 limit, cannot be used online, can't be used at certain merchants like a gambling or a pub, that can be used for shopping. And again, so there's a trust element. So we've created, we're the party that oversees that relationship, and we've built enough of the framework around it so that you can, as an individual, trust somebody that you may not know. It might be a volunteer, it might be, a neighbor, it might be somebody, we've enabled you to trust them. And then by making sure that product works and the way that it's supposed to, is enabling that trust to be sustained. And we apply that kind of thinking to all of the work that we do. And
there's a great example of that even last year when the UK ILS, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, came out. And we've talked about it before, that Anne was visible on Twitter the entire weekend, working with queries that were coming in from small businesses who needed that money straight away in order to meet their demands, to stay in business, or for whatever they needed it for. And the entire weekend, she was accountable, present, and engaging. And to see that from the CEO or an executive of a bank is just so rare. And I think that is tantamount to exactly what you're saying there. And it feeds into my next question on the SMEs, because, I'm an advocate for small, medium businesses, having come from a heritage perspective, as well as working in that space at the moment to make sure that SMEs are included and relevant in the future as well as the present. But you've got a toolkit that's recently been launched for SMEs, and this is going to really change how SMEs, especially micro businesses, participate in open banking and marketplaces, which you've mentioned, Elaine. So I would love to hear a bit more about that toolkit.
Yeah, the business toolkit, and again, and the target customer, and I don't like calling it the target customer, but Starling is a small business bank, and we have an awful lot of small businesses on our books, and we get an awful lot of startup businesses. I think because we're a startup digital bank, we're seen as a really good fit for really small startup businesses. And one of the challenges that the customers that we would serve would report, and they would almost be asking us for advice. How do I do this? How do I that? You want a tax letter for you want something from an accountant. I don't have an accountant. When people start business, sometimes they start them accidentally and they become a business, not overnight, but they realize they've got to actually put some structure around something that they're doing, and they have an opportunity to actually scale this and make it work for them and generate a living for them. So the toolkit then was sort of born out of this need from customers to help them with the financial running of their business. So the business toolkit that we have is integrated with lots of our marketplace providers like Xero for accounting, iZettle for transaction for receivables, and into then HMT for taxation. And so a person who's generating an invoice can actually do that through our business toolkit, send it with a payment link to an individual or to a customer. We apply, we know how much tax is going to be apportioned on that invoice. And then when the funds come in, we're able to disperse those into the person's account. And then if they've set up a VAT account on their accounts, we can put the VAT in. So the person doesn't have to worry about, how much VAT am I going to need to calculate and send to revenue at the end of the month. We do that for them, and we put the money in a safe, protected account that they can access, but it makes it easy. It just takes away that temptation. And then at the end of the month, you can set up a payment that will automatically pay your VAT. And then again, at the end of the year, it will help you with your tax returns as well. So
it's that seamless, invisible functionality.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you need in a banking app as well as a banking partner, where you don't have, banking relationships are important, of course, but at the same time, so for a micro business and a small business and a startup where you don't have people that are doing all of these jobs, you need something that you can just click, done, information is extractable from an individual perspective as well as to be uploaded into an API.
Yeah, and I think that, and I'm not here to sell or, as a sales pitch, but what I'm trying to say is that the technology that underpins that, and what the technology enables you to do as a business owner is to focus on your business, not to worry about your tax returns or have to pay X amount to an accountant, and an accountant's going to go and do all this stuff for you. Like, great, but it allows you to, with the resources that you have, to focus on your business, and to take away that headache from you. So that's what it's all about empowering.
And one of the things, because we're looking at the future of how we bank, sustainability is going to be a huge part of that, our accountability and the responsibilities that we hold as individuals as well as businesses. And I love that we say in your marketplace that you screen from a compliance perspective and regulation, but also from an ethical perspective, the partners that you engage with on your platform, because your negative externalities, if anyone understands that phrase from, if you're reading Donut Economics at the moment, or if you're reading any of David Attenborough's witness statement, or anything to do with new economics, negative externalities are what are not included in the price of what we're paying for in our everyday consumer lifestyle, and that's degradation of planet, that's degradation of the environment and overall society. And what applications can do is help us to identify where we're spending positively or negatively. And at the moment we're using it for maybe healthcare. And you gave an example in a previous conversation, Elaine, of an app that shows you what you're spending and how it conflicts with your targets from an overall well-being, either financial or health well-being perspective. So would love to hear a little bit more about that, and how it plays into the future of how we bank as well.
So, and again, this comes back to open banking, given like just the hordes and hordes of data that a bank has about you. And as I was saying about the psychology, so what it doesn't have is the psychology behind that, and how you will interact with different services, kind of just keeping your bank out of the equation, that can derail you somewhat. So if you think about it, and a good example, let's say, is something like MyFitnessPal, right? I'm every other, I'm going to log everything today, and I'm going to do, anyway, that's another story. But so let's say, you have a goal, right? And this is, again, goes back to Anne's mission. She wants your bank account to help you achieve your goals, and start a basic goal, whether it's, to do with financial goals, saving, investing. But actually, in actual fact, Anne goes one step further, and her mission is for you to live your best life. And your bank is at the center of that. And we are here to help you live your best life, really. So so in terms of the underlying data that we have, and then we have marketplace partners. There's a partner that we've integrated called Flux. Right? So if you enroll into Flux and you give Flux access to your bank account data through our marketplace, when you spend, you will get access to not just the financial information, but all of the underlying items, let's say on a receipt. So I've bought, let's say I went in, and the example she gives is, and it's a UK-based one, is Pret a Manger. I spent £20 in Pret, but actually what I did spend my money on was a sandwich and a coffee and a this and a this and a this. So if you then have that integrated into another system, like for example, MyFitnessPal, now I can see, well, I'm not just, I'm saying I'm eating this, that, and the other, but in actual fact, I've got data from my bank, which has not exactly where I've spent, but what I've spent my money on. And that is in complete conflict to what I've said.
Mm-hmm.
So
called out.
Get called out. But if you have that complete connectedness and seamless experience and seamless sharing of data, isn't that going to help you achieve your goal? So I think that's what's really powerful about the open banking. And then when we talk, because we were talking about this, the blockchain element of it, and this is where it gets really exciting, is provenance and transparency. And it goes one step further. What is going into that? Or if you talk about where you're spending your money, well, there's provenance behind that. Is that company, where you're spending your money, ethical? Is it sustainable? Is it, does it help you as an individual? If I say that I want to, reduce my carbon footprint or increase my contribution, to society in whatever way that may be, where I'm spending my money, and if the data behind that shows me otherwise, well, then I can make a decision. I don't want to spend my money there. I don't want to buy that product because, there is palm oil in it, and it's not on the ingredients, but in actual fact, the data behind that, and there's provenance to it. It's immutable. It's reliable. It's verified, and it's trusted. Then I will make a decision not to buy that product, or not to spend on that company, or not to invest in that company. So it creates this world of openness, honesty, transparency, to enable us to live our best lives, I think.
And the accountability, the corporations and the financial institutions will have to comply, because it will be the people that will be driving the decision making here, and the policy will follow from a government perspective in this instance. So that's a really exciting application that I'm looking forward to develop, and I know there's people in the audience who are looking forward to hearing about that as well. And on the point of the data integrity again, and even the generation that we have amongst us. Like I have nephews who are 6 years old and 16 months old, and I see them tinkering around. Well, not tinkering. My 6-year-old is more proficient with a mobile device than I am. You know, these are young people that are growing up in a digital age and are getting access to smart cards, something like your connected card from parents, etc. And they're using their phones to make transactions and payments at a much younger age these days. They even have phones at such a younger age than we did. How is that playing into your strategy from a future banking perspective? How are we looking after our young people as they move into as they grow into an evolving digital age?
Yeah, well, that when I actually left, when I finished a currency fair, I went to set up my own prepaid financial app called Pocketwire, which never actually launched. But one of the missions that I had with Pocketwire was to really teach children around financial behaviors and about money, and about where it came from, and how you earn it, and how you spend it, and the impact of spending, and other pillars around giving and sharing, etc., etc. Anyway, so Pocketwire, we didn't get out of the gates. Startups have cash flow requirements, and we didn't get the funding that we needed to actually launch the product. But here I am at Starling, and we actually launched a child proposition called the Kite Card, and again it goes back to like our values and our principles around teaching children around good financial behaviors, good money management skills. And our children are growing up in this really, it's everything is instant, right? And children, there's been studies for years and years and years around, the children's, needs or wants to instantly gratify, putting the sweets on the table and seeing who'll hold back and who'll take them. But they are used to it, and then they're being bombarded, and it is pervasive, this concept of like instant everything, and then games that they're playing with their own currencies like V-Bucks and Robux, and children just not having that concept of the relationship between 1,000 V-Bucks and €5, or so if my children hear me saying 1,000 euros, they in their heads think, well, that's 1,000 V-Bucks, that gets me whatever. So they've no relative value, they're not able to apply a value to what 1,000 euros actually is. So that's really, really important. So when we build products like that, we obviously look at who the end user is, and build in the level of controls, limits, that will actually help. It's not to control them, but it's to create a framework for them to operate safely in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. And not to kind of fuel that demand for instant gratification by giving them credit, or or allowing their card to go into an unauthorized overdraft. We wouldn't, we don't permit that at all. Mm-hmm. So it's just important from our perspective to stand over those kind of the principles behind why we launched a product like that.
And in the same vein, I suppose it's educating our seniors as well, because I've certainly seen in a social enterprise perspective, when we've got seniors coming in to purchase a cup of coffee, etc., that the more and more are using a Revolut card, for instance. And that has been really surprising over the last 10 months or so, that you see, and it's not a traditional bank card, it's always Revolut.
Yeah.
And obviously those cards have come from their children, I would presume, that say you need a card that you're only using for payment spending rather than your entire suite of banking products. So they've taken that away from their institutional bank, because obviously they need an underlying bank account in order to get a Revolut card at the moment. Seniors need a completely different type of education for this, because they're so much more susceptible to fraud in comparison to a child, because number one, they don't have total ownership of a vast amount of money. It's only a small amount with children, but with seniors, it's their entire life savings that could be a target for fraudsters. So how are you working with seniors to educate them on digital banking and the future of banking?
Yeah, I mean, our customer, we have a very diverse customer base. I think most people would imagine, think, oh, well, Starling would just have younger customers, it's a digital branchless bank. But in actual fact, we have a lot of customers who, who are older and who would have more kind of traditional relationships with the banks. And again, it goes back to being able to build up that trust. And that trust with people who are that little bit older, a lot of that will just come through human connection and human interaction. We don't have, we have a 24/7 contact center, and our customers will pick up the phone. And when we do, kind of analysis and look at where our contacts are coming from, generally speaking, from a consumer point of view, there's a lot, businesses will get in touch a lot through the phone, but business people like to have that human connection. But older people, younger people will typically sort out their problem through chat. Yep. Or they'll self-serve. They'll go into the FAQ, they'll see if they can find the answer themselves, and if they can't, they'll probably come to us on a chat. Whereas an older person will pick up the phone and ask the question, and that's really important, because it gives them that level of assurance that, this is not just a front, that there are real people behind it. We don't have a physical high street presence, but we are here, and you get a consistent experience no matter who you talk to in Starling. You don't experience, it's consistent. We train our people very well so that when we are dealing with customers, that they really feel like this is Starling. This isn't just a call center somewhere, that you feel like you're talking to a Starling customer. And that's something that very proud and Anne is very passionate about, is making sure that customers do feel that connection to Starling, because we don't have the branch to build up that relationship.
And what a forward-thinking decision to make, considering the last year, not to have the overheads of physical branches, and the fact that you're totally digital and online. You're ready and prepared for what was coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think as much as, you can say, I mean, COVID-19 is not, it's not pleasant and it's not nice. But in everything, no matter what it is, one man's foe is another man's friend. And I think from our perspective, I think what COVID-19 has just, or the pandemic has just highlighted, that we need services that can function seamlessly without the need to be physically present. And that's, we've all experienced that through work, through Zoom. Here we are, but from a banking perspective, but the only way that you can really scale that and deepen it is by making sure that your customers can trust you, because trust is everything when it comes to your money. It's everything, So I think that's one of the key reasons that Starling has been successful, and that we have not given up that value, and we haven't compromised that value in any way.
Long may it last. We're going to move to questions and answers. So a few questions have been coming in. Thank you so much, and please do keep them coming through. Here's one. Does Elaine think that sustainability has become too complex for SMEs to get actively involved in, and needs to be simplified to understand, engage with, and contribute to? That's a big one that I suppose we can both come at, because we've discussed it earlier on in the session, that it's the tools that are needed, and Starling has those tools.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think, even consumers ourselves, we're being fed so much information. We're being told so much about how to live a more sustainable life, and there's a lot of conflicting information. So I do think that it can be simplified, and I think that comes down to the technology and being able to present things in a very simple way, and to make it easy for you to know as an SME or an individual what your goal is, and how to engage with that goal and how to achieve that goal. Because goals are one thing, having a goal is one thing, but being able to achieve it is completely separate. Like that's it's different, and the underlying technologies that we have access to, like blockchain, are really powerful in helping us to achieve those goals.
Absolutely, absolutely, well said. And then the next question on to, do you believe that neobanks such as Starling believe that technologies such as platformification and offering its customer greater accessibility to financial services are its main differentiators to traditional banks?
Yeah, well, it is one of the kind of the main differentiator. I think the technology that our bank is built on, I mean, we're built in the cloud. One of our, I guess, the main differentiators I see is that our cost base is a lot lower. We don't maintain, physical branches and have huge amounts of staff to
And legacy.
and legacy to operate our bank. So that's probably one of the main differentiators. And then the second is our ability to respond very, very quickly to market needs, to customer needs, and to solve customer problems, and to launch new products that are exactly what customers want. And you come from that traditional bank, they take this kind of, you're looking out onto the horizon and trying to planning for, what customers might need, trying to anticipate, and you have a plan, and then you've got all the compliance pieces on top of that where you have to make changes. So that's going to cut your budget or your ability to deliver product. From the likes of Starling, we do things so quickly. So we don't have to have that 5-year horizon plan. We respond very, very quickly. Like we launched our connected card in 10 days. That was what it took for us. Because when we built the accounts initially, we built everything so flexibly that you can adapt our products without changing what's the underlying kind of offering too much. And we can adapt it very, very simply and get it into the market very quickly. I think purpose and culture is a big differentiator as well. And Starling is really built on the philosophy and the principles of the lean startup. If you ever talk to Anne, or if you see her in conversation, she has her library of books behind her, and you will see the lean startup. But she has read it cover to cover, I would say, on a number of occasions. She encourages us to test and to test in real world. Get our products out there. Don't wait for perfection. Be prepared for that product. Be embarrassed by it. Don't. It doesn't have to be perfect. But you can only do that with the assurance that you're not going to get in trouble over it, or that you're not going to. Your purpose is to get that product out there, and it's not conflicting with hers or anyone else's within the organization. There's no one else there with a different agenda to kind of come in, so culture is really, really key. And I think that's one of the main differentiators, as well as the other technical pieces.
But that ability and support and confidence to take risks, to take real risks without risking people's money, livelihoods, etc., it should be enticing for anybody in the audience who's in financial services and wondering, why haven't I moved into fintech yet? That's the reason, because you're not suppressed by years and years of legacy and decision-making processes, that you can move agilely, you can iterate, you can make mistakes, you can make real mistakes, and in a safe environment, and learn and grow. So love that answer. Thanks so much, Elaine. What else do we have? We've got a couple on... We weren't going to touch on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in this session, but we will in another one. I'll very quickly touch on, what do you think of the development of central bank digital currencies, and will we need banks to hold our money in the future? I think briefly a hybrid of both is going to be the way forward, not one or the other. We need to build on what we have and to use the expertise that we have, but we also need the forward thinking innovation of CBDCs, and other tokenization and digital currencies Do you want to touch on that, Elaine?
No, yeah, I agree. I do agree.
We can have a whole other session on that, and I'm sure Joyce is nodding in the background too. And what other questions do we have here? I was having issues when wanted to switch from a regular bank to an online bank because some service providers, electricity and internet, didn't allow direct debit payments from foreign banks. The same happened when receiving payments from government. My question is, would I have the same issues with Sterling International as it is a UK bank?
Right. So the reason you had that experience is because of a phenomenon called IBAN discrimination, right? So IBAN discrimination is prohibited, it's illegal. However, it happens, and it happens all over Europe. So what IBAN discrimination, so essentially what the regulators have said, and the SEPA regulations state, is that once you're within the member state, you cannot differentiate between each country's IBAN. So if I want to make a payment to you, it doesn't matter that your account is a DE IBAN or a UK or GB IBAN, it doesn't matter. That is still considered within the SEPA zone, and all of the rules of SEPA therefore apply. IBAN discrimination happens, and it happens a lot within certain countries and against certain countries' IBAN. So if you were a Spanish individual, if you're living in Spain, if you move to Spain and try to set up, use your Irish bank account to set up a direct debit in Spain, very often they'll turn around and say, no, we can't support that direct debit. You need to have a Spanish bank account to do so. And that is against the law. There is a movement, and it was started by, I think, TransferWise, Revolut, N26, and Klarna, called acceptmyiban.org. And actually, you know, I think it's useful. So if anyone has experienced IBAN discrimination, you basically go in, fill out a form, tell exactly your experience, and the TransferWise, the group that has set this up, their goal is to take this to the EPC and to lobby them to come down hard on the local regulators to enforce those rules in their own jurisdiction. Will it happen with Sterling? Well, it's an issue that, you know, when we launch across Europe, if we launch with an IE IBAN, an Irish IBAN, we may face, of course, because again, it comes down to how those rules are being adopted or how the behaviours in each of those local jurisdictions, but certainly not within Ireland. No, it shouldn't be experienced.
Fantastic. Well, Elaine, thank you so much for your time in detail and your expertise. We've covered so many points and it ticked every box of everything we wanted to speak about as well. So thanks for indulging me. And thank you to our audience who stayed with us for the entire time. We hope you enjoyed your sandwich, your lunchtime while you've been watching us. And just a couple of notes coming up to the next event that we have is on the 14th of April. So make sure to book in advance. Shane McCarthy from Downstream Beer will be presenting anyone for a blockchain beer. Lunchtime beers, anyone? Blockchain creating trust through transparency. And again, that's on Wednesday, the 14th of April, and you can register online now. And in addition, the National College of Ireland have a national certificate in emerging digital technologies level 7. And applications are open on ICT SkillNet website until the 30th of April. This specific course is for employees in industry, though there are also approximately 400 additional courses available on Springboard courses for either free or for 10% of their value for people who are in employment. So they take place with colleges and universities all across Ireland. So I hope that that gives everybody in the audience something that they can look into after this event. And then we've got a minute left, Elaine, if you wanted to add any closing comments.
No, thank you very much for having me. I think we are at, you know, it is a very exciting time. Who'd ever thought that banking was exciting? But I really do think that I think technology is really changing how we bank. It has been accelerated so much more beyond, you know, what any of us could have expected. So the future is really exciting. And I know there are people, you know, kind of looking at it, you know, from a technical point of view, you know, there are so many cool things that you guys can go and develop. So that's just really exciting.
Well, that should be inspiring for everybody. And I'll be seeing you on the road, Elaine, with you all the way. Thank you, everybody who's joined us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next event.